And I want to thank everybody for joining us this early afternoon. We're expecting a good crowd today. We got a great response to this presentation that we're going to be doing today. And I'm going to give people a few minutes to join in. It's a hot topic just before the holidays, just in between the holidays. And certainly people are responding and looking for resources. Going to give it one more minute before we get started. All right. Well, my name is Megan Andrews, and I'm the director here at Child and Family Services Employee Assistance Program. And I am once again excited, which is not too uncommon because usually we have some wonderful presenters, but today we have kind of a very special presenter, and her name is Jennifer Schultz. She is a licensed social worker, and she is one of our counselors here at EAP. And she is not only a senior counselor, but she's also the supervisor of clinical services here at Child and Family Services EAP. She comes with a wealth of experience around workplace issues. And it might be very familiar to many of you out in our audience. You may have interfaced with her at some point before. So today she's going to be talking about a topic that is near and dear to her heart, and that is really about taking care of ourselves so we can take care of others. And it is about that responsibility that we all have to take care of ourselves. And I am thrilled that all of you are taking this time out of your day to think about this topic and consider what you can do to be as prepared as possible. To address any of the stress that comes at you these days. I am for one glad that we are a little bit snow-free here this week, which is great. It was great to see it, and I'm glad it's gone. Probably not for everybody, but here in North Buffalo, it's definitely gone. As you can see, many people have already begun using the chat. Feel free to share who you are and where you're from. We'd love to hear from you. We have members of Child and Family Services EAP on this call today with all of us, but we also have some others that have joined us, who are some community members who are joining us today, and we're kind of excited to give them the opportunity to learn more about what we do here at Child and Family Services, and also gather some great information. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer and let her get started.
Great. Thank you so much, Megan. And thank you everyone for taking time out of your day to participate in this with us. I'm really happy to be here to share this topic with you. As Megan said, I am very passionate about the topic of self-care. As I'll share later, I wasn't always, but I am now, and I'm happy to share that with you. So our agenda for this presentation today, really just going to talk a little bit about self-care as a concept, have a little poll for you. Then we'll talk about stress and its impact, and then what you can do to manage. I'm really hoping that you'll walk away with a better understanding of why we need self-care, why it's important, and what you can do to improve your self-care, maybe having some new ideas. And so I'm kind of wondering how many of you kind of eye roll when you hear about self-care. I know that I used to. It felt like something that was optional or time consuming, and was really didn't seem that important to me. And so on that note, I have a quick little poll. I just kind of like to get your initial thoughts of self-care. Hopefully that is up on all of your screens now. If you could just fill that out for me real quick and send it back. I'd like to hear some initial thoughts that you have. I'll talk about them a little bit. Looks like this is really fun to watch. It's my first time using a poll. Looks like a lot of people feel like it's time consuming. This is kind of jumping around right now. Some people are saying it's expensive, only a reward, selfish. So far, no one thinks it's only about having fun, so that's good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. and share that with you, just so you can see. Are you all seeing that on your screens now? I hope. It looks like everyone answered. So about 30% of you roughly felt like none of these ideas applied to self-care. A lot of you feel like it's time consuming. Many people think it's expensive, only a reward, and a few people think that it's selfish. So I'm going to stop sharing that now, and we're going to go on and on with the presentation. So we click here. Okay, so stress. So stress, we define it as the difference between the demands on ourselves and our ability, or our perception of our ability to manage those demands. This time of year in particular, many of us are feeling extra stress. We have holidays, weather is more severe at this time of year, finances, world events, etc. There's no end to the things that give us stress. And stress is something that is part of life. There's no way we can ever completely eliminate it, so we have to manage it, correct? And stress can be a good thing in moderation. As the graph here shows you, there is that optimal performance area. But when we are up in high levels of stress for a prolonged period of time, or we're frequently going up into those high periods of stress, it can cause some damage to our body. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But I just want to point out that stress can come from things in our life that are good, you know, like planning a party or a family event. It can be stressful. Work, we might like our work, but it can still be stressful at times if we feel there's too much to do. You know, world events, some things are beyond our control and they cause stress. And so we need to think about what it does to us and how we can manage it. And so stress, when we have stress, it is managed by our central nervous system. We have the central nervous system, which has the two parts. You probably remember this from school, right? The sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. And that sympathetic nervous system is really what's kicked into high gear when we get that fight, flight, freeze response that we've all heard about. It is the gas pedal, if you will. It is what gives us that boost of adrenaline and energy to run if we're facing a threat. It is what causes our hearts to race. All of those responses, the fast, shallow breathing, a racing heart. But then the parasympathetic is the balancing act to that. When that fight, flight, freeze response is over, when we perceive that we're no longer in danger, that kicks in. That's our brake pedal. It causes us to start slowing down our breathing, to be able to relax. You know, when we're in the fight, flight, freeze, the gas pedal mode, the sympathetic mode, our digestion is halted or stopped. Growth is halted or stopped. Healing is halted or stopped, which is why it can cause problems. Things that you may not think of. Here are some common signs and symptoms that can be associated with stress. You might not even notice that you're stressed, but be having some of these symptoms. And so underneath, you're not feeling it in your conscious mind, but underneath your body might be responding to stress. I won't read this for you. You can certainly read it for yourself, but think about if you're having frequent headaches or stomach aches or digestive concerns, it might be because you're hitting that high stress too often or for too long of a period of time. It can also affect not only our physical and our brains, but that emotional and social part of ourselves. We may notice ourselves not wanting to engage with our family as much or questioning. And so those are some common signs and symptoms of stress that's been going on a lot or for too long, signs of approaching burnout. And they can lead to disease. As I mentioned before, when the fight, flight, freeze response, when that sympathetic nervous system is kicked in, parts of our body are slowed or not working. And when that doesn't happen for too long of a period or too often, we can end up with some of these stress-related diseases. Not all are 100% caused by stress, but they can be worsened or exacerbated by stress. So just something to bear in mind about what happens with stress. And so this is why we need self-care, because of all the stress that we can avoid as part of our daily life. Things are beyond our control. We need to be able to manage it. And that's what self-care is about. Self-care is not optional. It's something that we really need to do. It's how we restore ourselves so that we can get back to the business of living our life and taking care of the people that we care about, doing our work. And so self-care by definition are those activities and practices that we engage in to help reduce stress. It's better for our health, it's better for our emotional well-being, and it's better for the people around us. And the benefits of that are numerous, but as listed here, when we take care of ourselves, when we restore ourselves, we're able to function at our optimal level and recover more quickly. And it helps us, again, like we talked about, combat burnout. And so one of the reasons you're here today is to learn about, how do I do self-care? What do I need to do to develop a self-care plan? So first, it's thinking about what's happening in my life. Can I meet the current demands? What do I currently do that's self-care? Is there something that I can keep doing, or do I need to tweak it or change it? What do I really need to bring that balance back into my life? And thinking about the things that have helped in the past. You know, self-care plans are individual. It's not a one size fits all, which is why I'm not giving you step 1, 2, 3, 4 for exactly what to do. It's really thinking about yourself and what restores you. You know, as an example, we've all heard about people who are introverts and extroverts, right? An extrovert might really love to go to a party, and that might be their self-care, that being around other people and having a great time can help restore them and bring them some energy. But someone who's more introverted, that might not be what they want. They might prefer just to have a quiet evening at home with just their pet or with a friend and a cup of coffee. So thinking about yourself and what brings you peace and joy, what restores you, is really important. But here are some immediate strategies that you can take for self-care. Engaging with social supports, slowing down, practicing stress reduction techniques. And I'm going to go into those keys in more detail as we move forward. So first, social supports. The why of social supports is that we know, research tells us that when we're connected with our social support system, we get hormones in our body, dopamine, oxytocin. These hormones are associated with feelings of positivity, feelings of connection, feelings of empathy, feelings of trust, feelings of safety. And so those are really important. Then the research also tells us that people who have good social support system and have that increased dopamine and oxytocin flowing through their bodies, they report better self-esteem. Data shows us they have increased life expectancy and overall feelings of well-being. And the how of social supports is really up to you. What is your social support system? What feels good to you? If you have a challenging, difficult family, that may not be your self-care plan. But for people who do, that might be part of their self-care plan. Or it's your friend system, or it's your pets. Research tells us that our pets, spending time with them also gives us dopamine and oxytocin. But beyond what we think of as social supports, other aspects of social support that you might not think of are volunteer work, connecting with your faith, connecting with clubs. It's really thinking about, what are those things that are bigger and outside of ourselves that we can connect with? And those are the things that can help us feel that connection and that safety and be a big part of our self-care plan. And then the second key is slowing down. And the why of slowing down is we want to get from reacting, where our emotions take over and rule us, and it's just a wild, wild west in our mind, to taking that time to assess and then respond. I have here what we call the cognitive triangle. We have a thought inspires a feeling, and a feeling inspires behavior. How many of you have been at Wegmans on a Sunday afternoon? It's a madhouse in there, right? And if you've ever been cut off by someone, they cut you in line, or they're rudely taking up the entire aisle, the thought might be, wow, they're really rude. They think they're better than me, or some such thought. That thought can lead to that feeling rejected, feeling worthless, feeling angry or frustrated. And then that can lead to a behavior, which could be anything from huffing and puffing to cutting them off to saying something that might be out of your character to say. But if we can slow down and change that thought, we can have a different feeling and a different behavior. So, challenging that thought of, oh, that person's so rude, to, I wonder what's happening in their life that they're not paying attention to what they're doing. And then we have a different feeling, and it might be compassion that the person's struggling. It might be ambivalence, like, nah. And then the behavior changes, right? So if we're feeling like, oh, maybe we have some compassion for that person, our behavior might be to give them more space. Or if we're feeling kind of like, meh, we might just move on with our day and not give it a second thought. Either way, that has taken your stress level down tremendously, right? Instead of being angry and frustrated, feeling hurt, or taken advantage of, all of a sudden you're either feeling kind of nothing or a feeling of compassion, which kind of ties into that social connection of, the dopamine and the connection with people. And so how do we change what we think? It's really challenging thoughts that are causing us distressing feelings, challenging thoughts about ourselves. Here are some sample questions of how you might be able to shift the way that you think, thinking about, when you're feeling challenged in life and we're talking about self-care, thinking about these questions may help you shift the way that you're thinking and open up some different ideas for you. Another how to slowing down and changing the way that we think is thinking about changing how we feel. And our body posture is an important part of that. This particular graphic comes from a social psychologist, Amy Cuddy. She talked about this in a recent TED Talk. But the way that we hold our bodies, the way that we move can impact how we feel. So as in the graphic here, and as you might notice with me here today, instead of sitting down and hunched over with my arms crossed, I'm standing up here in front of you. I'm able to move a little bit. My hands are moving and open. What I'm trying to not only project to you, but also for myself is feeling of confidence, a feeling of openness. And I hope that that is conveying to you as well. When we are conscious of our body and our posture, it can really impact how we feel and also how people are perceiving us. If you're going into a meeting in particular, for example, that is going to be difficult, thinking about sitting straighter, sitting open, even relaxing your hands. I was in a training once where they told us, if you're starting to feel angry or frustrated, notice your hands. And if you can, lay them down flat, either on the table or in your lap, open and relaxed, and it will help release the anger. And I challenge you to try it next time you're feeling angry. It really does make a difference. And so moving forward, I really love this quote here. Warren Buffett, we've all heard of, and he says here, you will continue to suffer if you have an emotional reaction to everything. True power is sitting back and observing, using the power of restraint. If words control you, everything will control you. Breathe and allow things to pass. And what I really hope that you take from that is when we talk about slowing down, take that breath, allow that initial thought to go through, that initial feeling to go through, and then think about, what do you want to think? What do you want to feel? And how do you want to react? And that can really change things. And when we're talking about self-care, not letting our initial gut reaction rule us can really be an important step towards changing how we think and how we feel. And so the next key is practicing stress reduction. And this may be one of the more important ones of the keys to self-care because it's such a big one. But remember from earlier in this presentation, I talked about our central nervous system and the fight, flight, freeze response. And remember that when we go into that sympathetic response, different parts of our body are shut off. We have a flood of hormones, right? Especially adrenaline. And so when we talk about practicing stress reduction, we really want to think about how can we complete that stress cycle and push that stress out of our body. Probably all of you know already about physical activity as a stress reducer. But I want you to think beyond just exercise, beyond hitting the gym and going on the treadmill or the elliptical, because physical activity can be dancing. Like we talked about the extrovert, go to a party and dance, or just dance in your living room by yourself, jumping, any kind of movement. It can be yoga, it can be a walk in the park, but thinking about physical activity as part of your self-care plan. This I got from the book called Burnout: The Secrets to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. And I want to say, after reading that book, it really changed my mind and how I thought about self-care, and in particular, how I thought about physical activity and completing that stress cycle. I also want to point out that it doesn't have to be time consuming. It can be 5 minutes of dancing. It can be, taking 3 flights of stairs at work instead, but trying some kind of movement. But also another way to complete the stress cycle is creativity, painting, knitting, making music, singing, connecting with nature. Can be an emotional release. There is definitely research that supports crying and how some of those hormones are released through our tears. Laughing, connecting with people with laughing, and then breath work. Many of the clients, if any of you have been one of my clients, no doubt I've taught you about box breathing, right? Taking a nice slow deep breath in for a count of 4, pause and hold it for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, pause and hold for a count of 4, and repeat. That helps send a signal to your body to start that parasympathetic nervous system, restore balance. It's all part of a cycle and finding that balance. And so remember, our goal is to complete that stress recycle, get ourselves back to homeostasis, because we want to take care of ourselves so we can continue doing the things that we need to in life. Reminding ourselves that self-care is not a reward for good behavior. It's how we can be our best self, and that it's not selfish. It is about how we take care of ourselves so that we can keep moving on with our day. When talking about stress reduction, another practice you've probably heard a lot about is the concept of mindfulness. Mindfulness can be a really great option if some folks don't like meditation, if it's too hard for you to shut your mind off. Practicing mindfulness is kind of that in between that can be really helpful. And that's that idea of, if you look at this graphic, the person's taking a walk with their dog, they're out in nature, and instead of thinking about all those busy things, just thinking about, what do I see in front of me? What do I hear around me? What do I feel? I know that, just sharing with you, I don't particularly like meditation. I really struggle with keeping my mind clear, but I can practice mindfulness. I love to go out for a bike ride, especially in spring, and I will clear my mind and I'll think about, what do I smell right now? What do I see right now? What do I hear right now? And it really is restorative, because you're right here in that present moment. I'm also connecting with nature, connecting with the animals I see around me, smiling and waving at strangers, all of those things that are so important to the keys of self-care. So just, getting close to the end here, I really want you to walk away with thinking about, why is self-care important? Why those keys I shared with you are important, and how you might implement them into your life. We know that stress is not something that we can avoid. It's something that we all experience. That's not always about bad things. It can be about good things, and we have to manage it. And so thinking about those keys, thinking about, how do we connect with our social system? How do we slow down our thinking and changing how we think and how we feel? And how do we complete that stress cycle and restore ourselves? And just remember, self-care is personal to you. You might change your self-care plan along the way. I've changed mine many times. And it might need to change based on different circumstances in your life. Remember, it doesn't have to be time consuming. It doesn't have to be expensive. And it can be about more than just having fun. Sometimes self-care is about doing that load of laundry before you go to bed so you don't have to face it in the morning. Sometimes self-care is me staying a few minutes late after work to finish up a note so that I can start the day fresh. Sometimes self-care is me saying, I can't think about work anymore. I'm going to go home and I will deal with it tomorrow. So really being flexible in your ideas of thought and thoughts about self-care. And so as we're going to this next part, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Throw them in the chat or the Q&A. And I'm going to do that same poll again and see what you think about self-care as we're here on the end. So here you go. Just going to watch you fill that out. So I'm watching it. Some people are Most people are saying it's none of these. Some people still feel it's a little bit only about having fun or a reward. We're still seeing a little bit of time consuming. Okay, everyone has answered now. So I'll share that results with you. I will share with you, in my opinion, none of these apply, because I do, depending on, being creative. If you're finding that your self-care plan is expensive, think about an alternative that might give you the same thing that the expensive thing does. Like, I love to shop, I'll be honest with you. So instead of maybe buying a expensive thing, find something inexpensive or something that's free to do. Instead of something that's time consuming, is it something that you can do in small bites? I've recently seen research about the idea of exercise snacking, doing 5 minutes of exercise different times of the day instead of all at once. Certainly self-care can be a reward, but it doesn't have to be a reward. I just kind of want to debunk that one a little bit. And self-care, as I said, can be fun, but sometimes it's doing that load of laundry. So that is the end of that. I just would like you to walk away with this, thinking about how can you implement self-care so that you can keep going and being your best self and doing the things that you want to do. And I'm going to go to the last slide where I tell you how you can access EAP. Stop that and let Megan say what she wants to say.
Oh, Jen, this was really great. I mean, I've heard you talk about this topic often, but now I feel like I have to go home and dance by myself or something. That was great. What my takeaway is, there's options and you have to find out what calms your nervous system down. Because I would say, one of the questions that we have is that, and maybe we can take the slideshow down. And one of the questions is, how do you, what do you do that to manage when the kind of cause, the precipitator for your stress is outside of your control, Yeah. What are your thoughts?
It's hard when the stress is outside of our control, but it really is about how do we manage it. I like to think about when I was in grad school, I had a lot of stress that was beyond my control, in that I couldn't control how stressful grad school was. I could quit grad school, but I wasn't going to do that. So it became, how do I manage that? So instead of some of the other self-care, I really thought about what is the most restorative for me, and for, this might sound really cheesy, but one of them was prioritizing my marriage. And so I blocked off Saturday afternoons, and that was my marriage time, and nothing got in the way of that, not even final exams. And that was how I kept some balance and restoration in my life. So I invite people to really think about when it is beyond your control, what is one small thing that they can do that is restorative, that they can fit into their day. And it might be 5 minutes of prayer, 5 minutes of meditation.
Somebody just chatted cleaning out the garage.
The garage. I need to send that.
Hey, if you can accomplish something and reduce and be mindful, you're killing it. That's awesome.
Checking things off our list is certainly one way to get some self-care and make us feel good.
Yeah. I've got, some other recommendations, because one of the, having young children is one of the topics that was kind of brought up, and just really maximizing that time. I'm seeing and taking that moment. But I really liked how you share the information about the impact of the stress. We can't always change the precipitator, be it young kids, be it grief, be it anything that's causing us stress, but it's what can we do to preserve, to restore our neurological system, so we are better prepared to manage it. And I think that is really, you gave some great tips and some great tools, and everybody's kind of given some great suggestions here.
Seeing coloring, which is great.
Arcade games. Okay, Jennifer can attest to this. Yeah.
Video games are a great stress relief.
Yeah. And even, that with grief, I think that, one person is mentioning, when you're overwhelmed by that, especially during the holidays. We have a wonderful video that we did last year about grief during the holidays. And I would recommend that. It's on our website under, it's in the employee assistance program webinar section. And you can just search for grief, and there's a wonderful 30-minute discussion about the impact of grief and especially during the holidays, and some suggestions around that. So I certainly recommend that for sure. If anybody hasn't had an opportunity to, kind of review those resources on our website, feel free. Jennifer, maybe you want to give a plug for our Winter Wellness Challenge. I put a link in the chat section earlier.
Oh, thank you. I meant to bring that up. Yeah, on the note of self-care, we are having the Winter Wellness Challenge. It will be, I believe, 6 weeks of challenges coming out on, I believe, on Wednesday mornings, starting December 6th, is it? Yeah.
The 8th, Wednesday the 8th, I believe it is.
Oh, Wednesday the 8th, yes. So yeah, if you would like to do that, it is going to give you some ideas about how you prioritize yourself and taking care of yourself during this winter time where we tend to often struggle and hibernate. And so I really encourage you to sign up for that. There are prizes and drawings. My colleague has said it's Wednesday, December 7th.
Oh,
you can sign up through our website. You may have gotten an email through your HR provider, or not provider, but your HR representative at work, inviting you to sign up for that. And I really encourage that. I'm going to be doing that. I think it's going to be a great way to energize the winter weeks. And
I did put the link in the chat if anybody wants to scroll up and look into that. That's great. Well, I think you gave some great tips, and I really appreciate you taking the time, Jennifer, and sharing all this information. And I hope everybody takes a moment, after this, takes a deep breath and prepares themselves for what's coming over the next over the course of the next season. And if anybody has any questions or is seeking any information about resources or counseling, or just wants to chat, feel free to give us a call. 716-681-4300 is our phone number. And also always take a look at our website. You can request services there, and we would be happy to talk with anyone. Great. Thanks for coming, everyone.